All right, good morning. So today for our literacy block, for our shared reading time, these are our objectives. We are going to focus on reading while identifying key details. So I'd like you to take notes. If you don't have your closed reading book with you, then what you're going to do is just in a journal or a piece of paper, write down some things that we notice are important details. We're going to use those details to help us understand the main topic. The other thing we could do is write down a few words that we come across that perhaps we'd like to look up, because building vocabulary is the key to becoming a better reader. When you have a strong vocabulary, you have a great understanding of word meaning, and it adds to your ability to read better and to understand more. All right, so, and this detail here, this objective of ours, using complete sentences while sharing my thinking, that is going to be in all of your writing work. So you will use that area of completing your sentences through your activities in Google Classroom. Okay? All right, so let's move on and let's go ahead and begin reading our story. So we're focusing today on these two stories, How a Mountain Changes, and this is in your reading book, pages 16 and 17, or you can also access them through Benchmark Advance online. And remember, we read for 3 times. Okay, so How a Mountain Changes. You can tell if a mountain is young or old by looking at it. A young mountain has sharp, craggy peaks. An older mountain is more rounded because it has weathered longer. As centuries pass, wind blows away more and more of the mountain. So in paragraph 1, I already came across some words that I might want to look up. Craggy, centuries. So these are words that I might want to write down in my notes. And remember, if you are working on your book digitally, you can just click over here and you can write down words you want to look up. Okay? I am not going to tell you the meaning of these words because I want you to explore your learning. All right? But I am going to help you look at some key details here. So it did tell us if a mountain is young or old. We can tell by looking at it. So I might write down that a young mountain is what? Sharp, and there's that word. We have to find out what that means. Sharp peaks. So right now I write down sharp peaks. Oops, because I do understand what sharp means. Okay? But an older mountain would be what? Do you see it? More rounded. Okay, so those are some details that I would want to write down. Let's go on to paragraph 2. Rains carried debris down the mountainside, wearing away ever more soil and rock. Over time, wind and rain are like carvers, changing a mountain's size and shape. And this leads to one of our questions our classmates had about landforms and how do they change over time. So weathering is one of them. Here's another word for you. Whoops, not that one. Debris. Okay, so we could add that to our notes. We can add debris. And when you're doing your note-taking online, I believe it saves it for you. Okay, so if you close it out and you save this, it'll say something about, make custom changes. You say yes, because that's your notes. All right, so details from this paragraph. The details here are talking about the rain and the wind. So if I were to say, obviously the title gives me the main idea for the entire story. How a mountain changes, right? Because that's what this whole story is about. But if I'm looking at paragraph 1, what would you say paragraph 1 is mostly about? So paragraph 1 is mostly about young and old mountains, being able to identify the difference between a younger mountain and an older mountain. What about paragraph 2? Paragraph 2 is mostly about types of weather changing the mountain. So either rain or wind is how the mountain changes its appearance. So if it's a new mountain, it's very sharp, but the longer it's around, the more it's exposed to rain and wind, and then it smooths out its edges, right? And that's how we understand what we're reading. All right, let's go on to the next story. Hans saves the village. Now this one is a folktale, so we know folktales may or may not be true. There may be a little bit of truth to it, but it's so old and it's been passed on from generation to generation that it's really hard to prove any kind of fact, but there usually is some kind of lesson, all right? And sometimes with folktales, you may have inanimate objects that actually talk, like animals or things like that. So let's see. Once there was a little boy named Hans who was on his way to school when he saw a troubling sight. A trickle of water was leaking from a hole in the great dam. The dam held back the river so it would not flood the village. Hans knew he must stop the leak, so he put his foot into the hole. All day Hans stood with his foot in the hole, keeping the rushing waters at bay. Finally, 3 men saw the cold, tired boy. Quickly, they repaired the hole, allowing Hans to remove his foot at last. Hans was a hero. The grateful villagers built a statue of him so that everyone would know of his bravery. It does sound a little far-fetched, right? To have a boy stand for hours and hours and hours with his foot blocking the hole, but it does kind of let us know that somebody's got to be there to help, and if not you, then who, right? So if you see trouble and you're there, then do what you can to make things better. Remember, we talk about that all the time in class. You can be helpful or you can be hurtful. You can be part of the solution or you can be part of the problem. And in this case, we have a story about Hans who definitely was helpful and definitely part of the solution. So let's look here, because 2 totally different stories. But how do you think that hole got in the mountain in the first place? Or, excuse me, not the mountain, in the dam. How do you think that hole got in there? Could be weathering. Could be. Could be just over time the wood was getting weaker. Yep, that could be an option too. Well, look at paragraph 1 with me. So paragraph 1 kind of sets the tone for us, right? It gives us a little bit of background information here. It gives us the setting. It says, once there was a little boy, and it tells us what he was doing. He was on his way to school, and then he saw something. And it gives us a little bit more information, too, about what a dam is. A dam holds back the river so it won't flood the village. Can you think of anywhere near where you live or in your county, and you're all part of Cumberland County, even though it's on Fort Bragg, right? Can you think of any local dams? I challenge you to go find out some and take a look at them and what their real life work is. Okay, so much like the story, they hold back water. Well, Hans knew that the dam is what's holding back the water, and so there was a problem here, and he provided the solution. All right, now in this story, I don't see very many words that jump out at me, except for maybe the dam, okay? The dam might be something I'm not familiar with if I've never heard of it before, but this is a connection to some of our landforms. Even though the dam is man-made usually, now beavers can make dams too, and that's something you can learn about. But there's a purpose behind the dam, right? And it does help our landforms. All right, so those are our 2 stories for today. Remember, we're taking notes when we read. Now, we only read together one time, so you owe me how many more reads? That's right, 2 more reads today. Okay, and if you don't finish today, that is okay, because tomorrow is Wednesday and we take a break from the screen. That means we do work that doesn't really require a lot of computer time. So you can use your book and you can read the stories there and write down your notes. All right, manatees, see you soon.